So I have this two-part series on mindful living. A fortnight back, we had done the part one, which was primarily on the relevance of exercise and rest or sleep. And today it's a more, I would say, very juicy and more interesting topic on mindful living part two, which is more on the nutritional aspects, which is a topic which has also been very close to my heart. Just to recap, we spoke about mindful living in these four dimensions with regards to physical well-being, nutritional well-being, and you have had several sessions on the other two aspects, the emotional well-being and spiritual well-being. This is the way I have broken it, and this is the way I like to be visualized. And the first two, as I said last time, are something that each one of us needs to do it on a regular basis, something that we get opportunity every day to look at those various factors in terms of exercise, sleep, and the nutritional aspects. I look at it as a very low-hanging fruit, something which our body can continuously be talking to us on, and we can be very observant as to what's happening to us in these two areas. So coming to the nutritional well-being aspect, I have broken down this entire presentations in these four broad major areas in terms of when to eat, the timings to eat. There have been also some very interesting and nice questions with regards to that. What to eat, the specifics of what to eat. Again, we will be only talking about very broad general guidelines because it's a huge and interesting topic by itself, covering various facets of our daily routine. But still, we will be covering some broad aspects which are by and large applicable to most of us. How much to eat and how to eat, the mindful eating aspects of it. So with that, I will straight away get started on when to eat. Now, I'm sure most of us have heard various things about when to eat, what is the ideal time to eat. There have been also questions about it, and also about how much to eat based upon when to eat. So should the breakfast be a biggest meal, or should the lunch be a biggest meal, and so on. So there are several things that float around, and whatever are my learnings and my experiments on myself and my observations are, I would say, very closely related with the Ayurvedic model of understanding of all of these aspects. And a lot of things in the modern nutrition also these days I've seen a lot of strong correlation between both the Ayurvedic individualized approach versus the way the modern nutrition research is happening and moving towards more and more of individualization rather than just looking at generalization. So when to eat, most important aspect is to be aware of our own appetite. And what that basically means is eat when we are really, really hungry. So at least 2-3 times in a day, we get these opportunities to feel the hunger sensations in our tummy. And that is the best time to eat. Not just eating because it is time to eat, not just eating because somebody else is eating, but eat when hungry, because that is a time when the body is ready to accept the food and assimilate the food. So being able to experience the hunger in whatever 2-3 times of major meals that we have in a day is the best time to eat. Of course, along with our daily routine and our sleep cycles and our exercise routine and all that, our body cycle also falls into a regular pattern, and that does result into, over a period of time, by and large, fairly regular and timely eating. Of course, eating sumptuous meals 2 to 3 times a day and enjoying and relishing the food. When not to eat, yes, the eatings that we have in between the meals, which I'm calling it as binge eating, is they're typically more of emotional eating and not really the body's need to eat food, unless we have eaten very less for the previous meal, or because of some other emotional reasons, the body may be asking for that extra binge eating in between. If one really needs to eat at that point of time, it's best to have buttermilk or water or a fruit or maybe a carrot or a tomato and satisfy that need at that point of time if we are eating in between the meals. And of course, avoid eating late into nights. As per Ayurveda, it is best to eat before sunset, ideally. Of course, these days with the kind of daily routine that one has and the traffic that one needs to eat, it's best to eat, I would say, no later than 7:30. That's probably ideal, because the body's internal cycle of when the body produces the right amount of pitta or the fire in the abdomen is very closely linked with the solar cycle. So avoid eating very late into nights, like 9, 9:30, 10. That's on a long-term basis. If one continues it that way, that's again a big problem, one of the sources of various kinds of chronic ailments. So with that aspect,
Vasant, if I can interrupt, sorry to do that. When you say 2 to 3 times, you did tell us about the last meal of the day. What about the other 2 or 1?
Yeah. So the lunch time best is between, I would say, 11 to 1 or 1:30. Again, that will also depend upon the time we wake up, the kind of exercise that we do, when is the hunger maximum between that. Breakfast is something that is going to vary a lot. Even the need for breakfast can also vary a lot based upon the kind of activity that one does. And that will also sort of get covered when I'm talking about aspects with regards to intermittent fasting.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Ramesh. If there's anything like that, please don't hesitate to interrupt any of you. Okay, now we'll come to what to eat. This is a fairly very juicy topic filled with lots of confusions, people sharing lots of their individual anecdotal experiences, science trying to explain it in one way, Ayurveda saying something else. But so here again, I'm going to give more of general guidelines, which are applicable by and large for general well-being, not for any particular specific therapeutic needs. Now, till about last 2 or 3 decades, the modern science has been primarily exploring the question on what is really a good food for human beings. And now recently in last 2-3 decades, they have realized that what is good food can really vary a lot based on various situations, various climatic conditions, various personal daily routine, the kind of work that one does, whether it is a factory work or working on the land or being teachers. So it depends on so many different factors. So instead of asking that question, now even the modern nutrition has started working more on what is really good for me, because they have recognized that each person is unique and each person's even genetic makeup is so unique. And to some extent now they are beginning to classify people into certain genotypes. And fortunately, with our Eastern wisdom, we already have certain ways of classifying people's genetic makeup, which is called as Prakriti in Ayurveda. I'm sure all of you have heard of Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and the combination of those. That's what I'm referring to over here. So my focus will be seeing the commonality between these two aspects, okay, and not really dwelling into the details about the variations with regards to our individual genetic makeup, because even what food is most appropriate also changes with regards to our age. Up to the age of 25, 30, when the body is growing, the kind of food that is good is probably very different when person is going through middle age or even for the old age. So it's basically broad guidelines and framework. And ultimately, the motherhood statement is to start listening to our own body and to keep fine-tuning our food. Because particularly during the old age or beyond 60 years or 55, 60 years, the food that might have been relevant to me 5 or 10 years before may not be relevant to me anymore. My body has aged, my needs are different, my lifestyle may be different, my routine may be very different. So one has to keep fine-tuning, and I like to use the word as using that as a tool to enhance our self-awareness, being observant of what that food is doing to me physically, mentally, with regards to my moods, with regards to my bowel movements, with regards to motions, with regards to color of urine, whether the bowel is clear, what is it that the body is constantly rejecting in my stools, being observant of these various factors and keep fine-tuning and learning based upon that. That is the ultimate, I would say, the motherhood statement in terms of using that tool as refining what exactly to eat. So having said that, let me get on to more specific aspects, and of course, ultimately becoming our own dietitian. We all know about this. I don't need to spend much time on that. With the kind of plethora of food choices that exist in the market today, yes, they are very enticing, but definitely avoid processed foods, refined foods, sugary drinks. Prefer hot and fresh foods, non-refrigerated, very, very important. The food should be very close to the room temperature or maybe slightly warmer than the body temperature based upon what suits us best, but not really any kind of chilled food. Because when we are trying to assimilate the food in our body, we do not want body to do that extra work to be able to assimilate it. Give it in the form so that body can digest it more easily. And of course, the importance of whole grain versus refined foods, all of you are aware of these. Broadly, I would say avoid the junk foods which are available in the market. And I'm sure most of us are already doing that, but just to make the presentation complete, I added that slide. So some more, the meal should be simple and cooked fresh every day. So what is typically said is, once cooked, try to consume it within 3 to 5 hours after it is cooked. And a general rule of thumb, when in doubt, whether this kind of combination is appropriate, whether this food is appropriate or not, given the various choices that one has, prefer eating the food traditionally eaten by our grandmothers. That's a very simple rule of thumb when we are puzzled, when we have any sorts of dilemma with regards to food. Now, a combination of various kinds of food, whole grains, lentils, and vegetables, and even fruits is a good combination. Avoid getting into extremes like only raw or only nuts or only fruits for a long period of time, only vegetables, only millets. Again, there's a lot of millet fad right now going on with regards to going for only millets. I would say avoid any of these extremes as a part of your regular diet. However, if you're doing any of these under very controlled conditions, under an expert or a dietitian, as a part of your detox program, then it's a different case. But if you're doing it as a part of your daily diet, this is something not recommended. Of course, prefer complex carbohydrates than the simple carbs. Again, from the point of view of taste, avoiding extreme taste, which is extremely either spicy or pungent, very sour, sweet. These days, the market is flooded with a lot of tangy food items, sweet and sour. All the ketchups that are there in the market, very, very sort of enticing to have that, but try to minimize this extreme taste. And it's best to try and feel the food or the vegetables closest to its natural form. Of course, that doesn't mean having completely bland food, but as close to the natural form as possible, so that you can really feel the difference between all the masalas that we add in the food versus the real food, versus the real vegetable or the real fruit. Okay, this has been wrongly placed. We already, okay, one guideline about is keeping at least 2 to 3 hours gap before you go to bed. So that would normally mean that if we have to have our food before, let's say 7:30, the latest, then one shouldn't sleep before 10:30. Because the body needs that much amount of time for it to be fully digested. Otherwise, the digestion is improper, and which can again result into various other chronic diseases. In the current scenarios, with the kind of fast-paced life that we have, with the kind of daily changes and demands that we have, I know that it's hard to even follow some of these aspects. So at the same time, I would say let us not. I'm not very advocate about pushing ourselves too hard and suddenly making a switch, which not only affects us but also affects all the people around us in the family. But making small little changes every day and moving towards these broad guidelines without giving excuses is very, very critical. So this is what broadly I had on what to eat. I'll then move on to how much to eat. From a Ayurveda point of view, it's very clearly mentioned about 1/3 of food should be solid, 1/3 of our food should be sort of liquid, all the rasams and the buttermilks or the water that you consume, and 1/3 to be empty. So 1/3 of us, so fill only maximum 2/3 of our stomach at any point of time. Now, how do we decide how much is 1/3? That's a more difficult thing. Simple guidelines is if we're eating mindfully, slowly, being cognizant about the food, giving ourselves enough time to eat food, we'll recognize some burps that come from our abdomen. And of course, if we have eaten only when we are hungry. From Ayurveda point of view, they would normally say, stop beyond the first burp, definitely. If you can stop before that, still better. So optimal and mindful food is energy for the body. Stressful eating and overeating for a long period of time can result into various kinds of physical and mental illnesses. And in the intermediate, it is not only energy, but it's also toxins that gets into our body. Although the food may be same, but how we are eating is very, very important, and the quantity of food that we're eating. So the same thing about water. That's again a very common question about how much water to drink. And with the WhatsApp University, yes, there's so many different formulas all over about minimum 4 liters, minimum 5 liters. There are also research papers saying that make sure you have at least 1.5 liters of urine production every day on that. Ayurveda mentions it in a very, very simple way, is to drink as much as your thirst demands. So just as the timings of the food, it mentions about eating when you're hungry, here again, the formula that it gives is drink as much water, do not drink less or do not drink more. One of the simple biofeedback mechanism is to observe the color of our own urine and figure out whether we are drinking enough water or not. That's another simple way to figure out. Quite often, when we are very cognitively busy, I call it as too much in the head, one does tend to forget to drink water. That's again a good signal that to remain connected with our thirst and to drink water as much as is needed. Because excess drinking of water is also a load on our kidneys, is also not good in the long run. And it's also not good to drink water just after meals. So minimize water during meals. Our food already has good amount of water, particularly the Indian food. So in between meal, only if you have eaten something very spicy, something very pungent, this just to satisfy that, yes, you can have some amount of water. Yes, Vidya, the amount of water need does change even according to season. Summer seasons, yes, the body demands a lot more water. Our hunger in summer is generally less than in winter. In winter, the body is fighting out the external temperatures and the body's metabolism is a lot higher. The hunger is also more. The need for water also depends upon the kind of work that we are doing. The day I work out in my garden, particularly in summer, my needs for water is a lot more in the hot season. But if I'm indoors, my needs for water are less. So the need for water changes based upon so many different factors. And a simple thumb rule is to drink as much as we are thirsty. Typically, half an hour or 1 hour after big meals, if one needs to drink water, that's fine. Otherwise, water can also inhibit digestion. Okay, now I'll come to the last topic on how to eat and the importance of mindful eating. So even if you have taken care of all other aspects in terms of the right food, the best of the food quality, in terms of organic food or the cold pressed oils and various, taking care of all other factors, but if the food is not eaten in a healthy environment, it's not eaten mindfully, it can again have various detrimental effects on our health. In its simplest way, mindful eating is nothing but stress-free eating, enjoying our meals, giving enough time for our meals and not just to have it quickly in about 10-15 minutes, but relishing that food and enjoying that food. So avoiding any of these difficult emotions while we're eating. So these days, working lunch has become quite a common norm, but make sure that it is a healthy working environment. Otherwise, if we are already expecting some difficult meetings, better not to eat during those times. Of course, how to eat, chewing the food properly and not really giving that extra load to the abdomen. So chewing it fully, relishing that food, finding out the real taste of that food is equally important, for the simple reason that the stomach has no teeth. Whatever chewing has to be done in mouth. The enzymes that get secreted along with the saliva with the food help us enormously in terms of digesting and relishing the food properly. Some other simple tips. Good to have some 30 seconds of quiet time, some deep breath before taking our food. If one is used to prayers, great. individualized food. What I mean to say is not looking at somebody else's plate during the food, but taking food what is most relevant for us and not based upon what is available in the menu. Giving ourselves adequate time. Typically for the biggest meals, the lunch or the dinner, I would say about minimum 20-25 minutes is, I would say, definitely essential. If you can even go up to 30-35 minutes, that's perfectly fine. Giving ourselves that adequate time and not just completing it and rushing on to something else. Having a quiet environment or a meditative or isolated dining is also a great way in terms of practicing to eat mindfully. Just put together 6 major ways, which has been nicely put together in terms of from this mindful.org website about what is mindful eating and what is mindless eating. So one is listening to our body signals and stopping when you are about 2/3 full. That's very, very crucial, and avoiding overeating and ignoring body signals to eat. We again spoke about this. Eating when our emotions tell us to eat, whether we are sad or bored or lonely, versus eating when our stomach is really growling or we are really in terms of physically low energy, not really mentally low energy. So eating when our bodies tell us to eat. Eating with our loved ones at set time and places versus eating alone at random times, erratic times, and that again upsets our internal body's clock and internal body cycle. And doing that continuously on a regular basis is again can have detrimental effects on our health. Eating foods that are emotionally comforting, like the tangy food, the sweet and sour food, versus eating food that are nutritionally healthy. Again, look at that. Look at that very carefully, the difference between the two. Eating and multitasking. Best is when we are eating, just eating. That's more closer to mindful eating. And this aspect of having a sense of attitude of gratitude towards the entire food chain while we are eating, right from the person who has cooked the meal for us to the person who probably produced this vegetables, got it to our home, and the farmers and the earthworms. You can just keep going back and being grateful for the entire food chain. So many things in the natural cycle that have come together to have the food on our table, and being grateful towards all of that versus considering the meal just as an end product to be consumed. So these are some simple tips in terms of mindful eating. Quite often the very eating slowly these days, people do ask about how do I really slow down? It becomes very difficult. Some simple rules or some simple ways that one can look at is not touching our plate till the first morsel of our whatever bite we have taken is fully bitten and pushed into the stomach. So taking it slowly one at a time, or using our non-dominant hand, our left hand, let's say, for eating. That's again a good way of slowing us down and reminding ourselves to slow down while we're eating. Okay, now the last topic is again about fasting. Very, very crucial, very important. A lot of research that has happened now to also supplement and augment what has been also mentioned by our ancient scriptures and including in Ayurveda. Just in 2016, a Japanese scientist won a Nobel Prize on what's called as the phenomena of autophagy and how fasting can really help in various chronic ailments, in clearing up of our internal toxins or debris right at the cellular level. And he proved it with evidence-based approach and saying that how it can help, even not just for physical chronic ailments or psychosomatic ailments, even for various neurodegenerative ailments, how fasting can help enormously. So what does fasting do? It enables to cleanse ourselves, flush out toxins, of course enables weight loss and also boosting our metabolism. So if somebody like me who is looking for weight gain, again, fasting helps to open up internal channels so that initially, although you lose weight, but later on you can gain weight. And there have been, again, a lot of clinical evidences to support that, how fasting can help various, both for enhancing our weight as well as for losing weight. Again, it will depend upon every person's constitution, how much to fast, what to fast, and things like that. It can delay aging. It can, of course, extend our longevity. For various inflammatory diseases, it does enhance our health by fighting inflammation. It enhances health of the heart by improving our blood pressure and including cholesterol levels. All this that I'm saying is from Tier 1 scientific papers published in peer-reviewed journals. It enhances brain functions and minimizes various neurodegenerative disorders. And that has been something very, very unique that was also found out, how it can even help for at early stages of Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, how fasting can help enhance our brain functions. Now, coming to various types of fasting. One is what that we most commonly hear is about water fasting, that is complete fast and just remaining on water. The second is type of fasting is juice fasting, fruits and vegetables only, and that also only in juice forms. Even within that, some people restrict the kind of fruits or the kind of vegetable juices that one should have. Intermittent fasting, more common, that is something now catching on world over, which can be fasting anything between 12 hours to 48 hours is considered as intermittent fasting. So intermittent fasting has become quite common these days, having early dinner and late breakfast and giving that more time for the body, not giving enough, basically not overloading our body for a longer period of time and allowing that internal repair mechanism or rest to the internal digestive system. People also do partial fasting, like avoiding cereals and fasting for a period of time, or various calorie restriction kind of fasting, taking only specific food items for a longer period of time. Now, what kind of fasting is best for us is again a very interesting question. I would say start with something small, easy to do, that is intermittent fasting, rather than jumping onto something anything more than 2-3 days of fasting is without the help of a dietitian or an expert, being done in a controlled environment is something not recommended. When I say 2-3 days of just water fasting on our own at home, unless one is used to it, is definitely not recommended. So starting in a small way, but being consistent. So intermittent fasting is a great way, is what I feel, which one can start off by having early dinner and late breakfast, and even breakfast can be limited to just something like fruits, something that can be easily digested, unless one has a very heavy workout early in the morning. One goes out jogging, playing, sweating out, then in that case, that person's needs for breakfast and the quantity of food can be different. But if that's not the case, having a light fruit kind of breakfast or very light, just 1 or 2 idlis is mostly good enough with the kind of sedentary work that most of us have, followed by a good lunch and again a light and early dinner. is recommended. Yes, I like this cartoon where we wouldn't like to fast very quickly. Fasting is a very organic process for the body's internal repair mechanism. We need to give it enough time, and we cannot end our fast very quickly in a very fast and rapid way. Okay, that's all I had. And most important is this entire process has to be a learning process, enjoying our major aspects of our daily routine with regards to food, sleep, and exercise. This is what we spoke about, which in Ayurveda is described in very detail in terms of what they call it as dinacharya, a daily routine, how it is to be done. Ayurveda also talks about other factors with regards to rutucharya or the seasonal cycles, how our body changes during the various seasons, and how there can be a little bit of fine tuning into all of these aspects as the seasons change. As the days become longer in summer versus winter, how some of these aspects can change. What to eat can also slightly change. And actually our festivals that we have in various seasons in this country are again a great tool. If you look at the kind of food that was recommended during Diwali time, Dashra time, or during rainy seasons, and our festivals are very closely linked with those minor changes that can be done with regards to changes in our seasons. We won't get into those what's called as rutucharya or the seasonal cycles, but what we spoke about is primarily with regards to the dinacharya or the daily routine aspects, and again very broad guidelines without getting into any particular ailment or a particular genetic makeup on the importance of food, sleep, and exercise. So that's all I had. And thanks a lot for listening to this, to me, a topic which is very, very close to me. And I use this as a something that keeps me ticking